Would you just get us started?
Okay. Can you guys see me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd first like to thank each and every one of you for joining our event tonight, despite the pressures and the challenges that we are facing during this pandemic. I do hope that we are all doing well, that we are taking care of ourselves and our loved ones, and that we are healthy in body and mind and safe at home. I am Akona Mkhize, and I am chairperson for the University of KwaZulu-Natal Student Chapter. Sanamugela to our first ever online financial literacy workshop. I do hope that at the end of this event, that we are going to be enriched with financial knowledge that is going to bring about difference in our lives and also pass it on to others as well. With that being said, our topic for tonight is aligning your investments with your life stage. I'm going to hand things over to the Program Director, Sihle Hlajwayo, who is Head of Strategic Alliance in our executive team, as well as the founder of the Finance Gen. Over to you, Sihle.
Just a warm greeting to everyone, and thank you for everyone for just tuning in once again. Just to get us off our stumbling blocks, and I'll hand over to Langa Madonka, who is the Deputy President of ABSIP National, who has just a few words to say before we get started.
It seems Langa is having an issue, but once he's logged in, we'll ask him maybe to say a few words at the end. So I'd suggest that we continue whilst he sorts out his connection.
Oh, okay. So as we start, I think we'll just move on to the meat of the bulk of the conversation. We'll just start off with Gregory Makama, who actually has quite an extensive list in terms of experience. He is currently a management consultant at Letsema, and I will be handing over the floor to him right now to expand a bit more on the subject of today.
Thank you guys for inviting me today. I was informed to speak on, the different stages of accumulating wealth, investments, but the conversation can go in any direction based on the questions that you guys may have, any burning questions. So when we talk about, the different stages of investments, to bring it back home. So first, you've got your accumulating of wealth. The next stage is management of wealth, so managing your wealth. The third stage is preserving or protecting your wealth. And the fourth stage is we'll talk to transferring your wealth. So what do we mean by accumulation of wealth, right? So, in the South African context or whichever context you're in, let's assume, the majority of you are in university. So in a setting like that, right, obviously the accumulation of wealth is not the number one thing in your priority, if we're honest. It's more about, how do I invest my money from the beginning? And the idea of investing your money, it's quite important to understand that you need to have the thinking of the end in mind. So with university, the most ideal position you want to find yourself in is just getting into the habit of investing, right? it's very important because I think that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks for a lot of people is just the mere habit of putting, even 10% of your allowance aside, and really just getting into the habit of that. That's quite important because when you leave varsity, there's a lot of upfront costs that you experience, especially once you get a job and you're relocating perhaps into a bigger city or a smaller city. And you first have to pay upfront fees like deposit and the rent, or, you need to have some sort of deposit for a car if your work requires you to travel quite a bit. And that's really the idea, right, in university. So the idea is to just get into the culture, the habits of saving. So we wouldn't say at that point it's accumulation of wealth. So it's like putting your money into like a unit trust. You'll be saving your money for at least 4 years, depending how much time you're in varsity. And it's really in preparation for those upfront costs. And then you've also got your graduation, which for the most part, a lot of young professionals actually start their debt accumulation at that point in time. Or they start their debt accumulation because, they haven't saved up a bit of money for putting up furniture in the apartment that they've just moved into, if they have to move to a different place and stuff like that. So the idea in varsity is really saving up for those initial upfront costs at the beginning. Ideally, trying to target saving 10% of your allowance. It's a good starting point. Now, when you then become a young professional, there's then obviously a lot more at play. So those on NSFAS, ideally you'd want to always prioritize your debt over the investments, because generally your interest on your debt is higher than the interest that you'll get on your investment. So prioritizing, trying to cut down on some of that debt is already a good way to start reducing your debt exposure. But simultaneously also after, or while you do that, you can also then start saving for retirement. Now, young professionals always ask retirement, I'm only 23, 24, and you're telling me to save for retirement. But one thing I can tell you, and the statistics are there, is that only 10% of people actually retire comfortably. So, and that's a very scary statistic. I have dealt with a lot of pensioners during my time when I was a wealth manager, and for the most part, they weren't ready to retire. Some of them had to continue working, or others had no option but to just take the pension that they had. So again, that's about keeping the end in mind. How do you start now, to protect your future? Then as you grow, you start accumulating a bit more debt, maybe get a mortgage here and maybe another car. Then it's about how do you now protect, these assets that you're trying to accumulate. So initially, those assets are still part of the bank because you're indebted to the banks. And but during that time, you need to protect your exposure. So it's about getting, life insurance, car insurance, to really protect anything that could happen to those kinds of assets. And when you're also employed, for the most part, you're also contributing to a pension at work. And, they say young professionals like changing jobs and stuff like that. And the idea when you're changing a job is not to cash out your pension. You see this huge, large lump sum, and you just decide to cash it out. And why people generally do that, again, it's because, they don't keep the end in mind that this is actually for my retirement, and this wasn't another kind of piggy bank saving. So it's about when you're changing jobs, putting your pension in something we call a preservation fund, and then it grows from there. And lastly, from the protection preserving, then we're going to then move into the transferring of wealth. And when you get older, what's more important there is having an estate plan. You know, when you've got kids, a wife or a husband, and you're looking at leaving whatever you've accumulated, you know, for your loved ones. So really getting into starting up an estate plan. So now I'm talking about all these things, right? Life insurance, estate plan, retirement annuity. How do you get access to them? Now, there's a lot of platforms that you can use to get access to them. Or, you know, you can get independent financial advisor. I always recommend an independent financial advisor because they have the opportunity to look at different service providers and based on your context, you know, recommend financial products that are best suited for you. And basically that's a way of also helping you getting accountability as well to ensure that you achieve the goals that you set yourself to. So yeah, if there are any questions, I'm open. Basically, do we leave the questions for last?
We'll be having a Q&A session last. I just forgot to mention that in the beginning. We'll be having a Q&A session after our second speaker. If anyone has any questions throughout the session, please send through a message through our chat feature, and we will relay them to the guests.
Okay.
I think now we should move onwards to Sthandiwe's segment. She is the co-founder of Candid Talks, and I'll just give her a young opportunity to just expand a bit on herself and the subject matter at hand today.
Sihle, I think the video option has been stopped for me. I'm not too sure if, hello?
No, we can hear you.
Hello?
Enable it now. Proceed.
Can you see me?
No, we can't see you.
Okay. Let me just try and sort this out. I'm so sorry. Stop my video. Awesome. Can you see me? Oh, it's quite dark. Hello?
Hi.
Can you guys see me clearly?
We can, but it's dark.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
That's very dark.
Proceed.
Okay, I am so sorry about the terrible lighting, but I hope you guys can hear me clearly. First of all, thank you so much for extending the invitation to me today. It's an incredible honor to be speaking, and I was also asked to speak on the topic of aligning your investments with your life stage from a student's perspective. When I think of this topic, it definitely reminds me of what Gregory touched on when he said that you always have to keep the end in mind. And we as students often fall in the trap of trying to think that we need to deal with all of these responsibilities after graduating and after university. And we don't really take into cognizance the fact that we really need to start thinking about the end right now while we're still students. And it brings me to my first point on this topic about always understanding that your financial freedom begins in university with the allowances we get and with the different ventures that we start with and the different ventures that we go into. And when I talk from my own personal point of view and the things that I've started up while I was in university, as Sihle said, Candid Conversations, which is an online blog. I've also founded a beauty company called ABSIP Beauty & Co, where we deal with beauty products and hair retailing and many other different startups that I've just tapped into to try and see what is it that I could try and do with the entrepreneurial skills that I have. And so I definitely think that when it comes to entrepreneurship and side hustle, which is my first point, is the fact that university is the playground to try touch on anything and everything that you are interested in, whether it's a skill that you have, whether it's a talent that you have, or trying to leverage off of the different things that you're studying in your degree to try and get into different spaces that you think you could get into. And when I think about aligning your investments with your life stage, to start a business or to go into entrepreneurship or even to just try and be financially smart, you don't need 10 million rands to do it. All you need is what you have. And when I thought of this, I automatically thought of the biggest business titans like Bill Gates and Paul Allen, who started Microsoft in college, and Mark Zuckerberg, who started Facebook at Harvard, as well as Michael Dell, who started the PCs for Dell at the University of Texas. And all those people really just leveraged off of their capabilities and their talents at that life stage, at that moment, which was university, to try and create something bigger than themselves, which when they look back now, they realize that it yielded a very high return for them. So I think when students look at what they can do to try and leverage off of the skills that they have to try and generate a financial return for them, they need to look at the skills that they have, and they need to look at what they are interested in so that they can go into it apart from their studies, or take knowledge from their studies to try and get into a different industry or a place that they want to get into to try and make an extra income for themselves. Also, I think as a student, we take lightly the option of small investments, whether it's a fixed deposit account with a big commercial bank, or another example is REITs, real estate interest trust. If you are someone who is interested in property and the property industry, obviously at the life stage that we are in now as students, most of us don't have the capacity to run a full building and a full property, but that doesn't mean that we can't get involved in those spaces if we are interested in them, and things like REITs are viable options that we can look into if we want to really align our life stage with the investments that we want to make. Another topic and realm of the student's life in terms of finances that I was asked to speak about is setting purpose-driven goals. And I think when I think of this, I'm also led back to what Gregory said about keep the end in mind. It's all about having an intention about what you want to do and where you want to be. I think in university, we often sign ourselves up for degrees or whatever it is that we sign ourselves up for without an intention, but just because we were told that we need to study this and study that. But if you are going to pursue that, it's very important to know what the intention is that you want, because oftentimes degrees and the different businesses we start or the different ventures that we go into are just a stepping stone to somewhere else that we want to be. So I think it's definitely important to set intentions for yourself, as well as with your financial goals as a student. If you want to one day have a business that you want to run straight after graduating that relates to the degree that you're doing, it's important to slowly but surely start saving up the money that you get from your allowances or whatever other sources of revenue that you have, bit by bit, so that after you graduate, at least you have something to start that business that you want to start off after graduating, as opposed to just starting off from ground zero with nothing. And that's setting a clear intention, that's setting a clear goal with a clear intention. I also think to develop our financial, literacy and acumen, it's also important to take so much full advantage of the different societies that are available in universities that pertain to business or entrepreneurship, or whatever space that you are interested in. I think that for me personally, when I started at WITS, the society that I joined was the Business Women's Association, and it's a space for young women at WITS who are interested in business and want to form those networks and those contacts with people who are in business and entrepreneurship, who can really give them words of inspiration and different learning methods as to how to run your businesses. And through those organizations and through those societies, I've managed to meet so many other young women who are budding entrepreneurs. I've managed to get into spaces with people who are in different industries, who could be potential employers one day. So I think if you have a goal in mind of where you want to be after you graduate, whether it's in employment or starting a business, in the life stage that we are in now as students, there's so many resources available to us, and if you could just take advantage of those opportunities and leverage off of them, we could gain all of the contacts, the networks, and the different revenue streams that we need now to fit our life stage, so that one day when we do graduate and become young professionals, we have built a little bank for ourselves that we can profit off of in our next life stage. Another thing I was asked to speak on is kick-starting your career at university. Again, I go back to the whole fact that our careers don't begin when we graduate and start working. Our careers begin when we first get to our first class and learn about what it is we're learning about in our respective degrees. So I think it's important for us to do respective research into the different things that we're studying, and also look at how what we're studying can help us formulate our own ways to start a business or whatever venture you want to go into. I mean, if you're studying journalism and you have an interest in starting an online magazine or an online blog, the knowledge that you gain from what you're studying and what you're doing could help you so much in your business venture or whatever venture you want to go off into. So everything has a link. And the minute you're able to connect the dots and connect those links with each other, I think that's when you're actually able to make an investment off of the stage that you are in now, so that in the next 2 or 3 years, that can generate a return for you that could take you to places that you didn't even think you could go to in your own capacity as well. So I think as a student, it's important for us to investigate all the financial options we have and all the things that we can do with our allowances and our savings, whether it's NSFAS, whether it's a bursary, to look at where you can invest it, how you can invest it. I strongly recommend for students who are interested in entrepreneurship and broadening their financial literacy to also take advantage of joining different societies and different clubs in their universities and spaces that cater to that and grow that knowledge and nurture it, so that even though if you aren't making a financial monetary return at this moment, you're generating all the contacts and all the things that you need, so that one day when you get to a different life stage, you're able to leverage off of that. And from my own personal experience, the one skill that I've been able to sort of use as a side hustle in these 3 years that I've been in university is the power and the ability to speak and to be in public spaces. I've managed to build my social media profiles and YouTube profiles to be able to start an online blog called Candid Conversations, or Candid Talks rather, with Ta, and also doing campaigns with different brands that approach me to help them grow their brand with my social media platform. I also find myself emceeing for different events at VITS or whatever other organization asks me to MC for them. And so I've been able to isolate my different talents and my different skills and ask myself, how can I bottle those things up and sell it to someone even though I'm in university? Or how can I take the knowledge that I have from the degree that I'm studying, which is a BCom degree, and use it in the different business ventures that I've tried to go into? And I think that's the best way we can use the life stage that we're in now and leverage off of it to venture into other things that that could generate higher return to us in future. And so I think financial literacy is something that we definitely need to be intentional about. It's something that we need to be deliberate about, because unfortunately, after high school, during high school, it's not something that's stressed as I think it should be. It's not something that's taught deliberately. I think it's very ludicrous that we are supposed to just somehow get out of high school and find a way to manage our allowances, which really sets the tone for how we're going to manage all the other income we get after high school. After university. So surrounding yourself in spaces that allow you to nurture that knowledge and doing the research that you need to do, I think is the best way to find out how you can really align your investments with your life stage. I think that's it from my side.
I think I'll just open it up then to some of the questions that we've received. With the first question aimed at Greg. This is one from our subbies, actually, from one of our subscribers. What options can someone who's new to the working world, earning a salary of 6,500 and looking into beginning their journey of creating generational wealth, what options can that person explore in the property sector? Sorry, Greg, your mic is just off.
Sorry. Yeah, that's a slightly interesting question, because if you're earning 6.5, I'm assuming you are staying at home, you've got minimal to zero expenses, and this is surplus money. So remember, when it comes to investing, ideally you want to be investing with your surplus money. You don't want to invest with money that, if you lose it, puts you in a very serious compromising situation. So remember, there's a difference between saving and investing. Where with saving, it's for emergencies and stuff like that. Then investing, it's really locking up the money for the long term. So let's assume that that's a surplus of 6,500. They are, as what's the name, Sthandiwe mentioned, there's REITs, there's trusts, there's unit trusts, which encapsulates, maybe a lot of property portfolios that they put together, which you are able to invest in at certain minimums. And I think, your organizations like Easy Equities as well have created new different portfolios that allow you to participate, in the property market without being fully exposed. And, in a situation like this, you can't really afford it, but such platforms allow you in a good cost effective way to participate in the property space. I see Langa's here. He's more of the expert when it comes to property. His funds are also in property, so he could also speak to that. Joe.
We will be hearing from Langa. I just hope he's taking a couple of notes and just gonna expand on a couple of the things, because he is going to be speaking just after this Q&A. The next question is for Greg also. What is currently happening with the markets? What opportunities can one take advantage of?
Yeah, so I mean, it's quite important that there's a lot of noise happening at the moment, right? So it's quite difficult to make very strategic financial decisions. But how you need to think about, the things that are happening is that, what are the industries that are going to, after, this pandemic, what are the kinds of industries that will be prevailing? What are the things and interests will people be focusing on, And from that, then you're able to then start thinking about the companies that are involved in those spaces that could be potential investments. So you need to think about, almost a top-down approach where are things moving to, and from that, decide which companies of interest of that. Then from there, you also then study, the leadership of that organization and that kind of stuff. So you also almost do a due diligence. But for the investor that's not that savvy, as I mentioned, unit trusts are always the easiest place to go to and the most affordable for students and young professionals. The bigger kinds of investments that are more unique in their nature require huge amounts of money to really start investing into.
On to the next question. This one is directed at Star. The question is, how have you personally been able to save money from the different ventures that have generated money for you? Is it the fixed deposit at the bank? If not, what is it?
In response to that question, apart from saving money, I think Greg said a very important thing about also there's a difference between saving and investing money. So apart from just saving money on a month-to-month basis with the allowances that I get, I also try and explore different business ventures that maybe my peers or family members could be going into, and invest in that kind of as not an angel investor, but try and invest in those different businesses. And if obviously they generate a return, I get a return on that, and finding those ways to be able to also maximize on the money that you have and help grow it, as apart from just putting it away in the bank. Because when you put it away in the bank, nothing really happens to it. It just maybe grows by a small amount. But it's also when you take the risks of wanting to explore what other people are doing and investing in that. So even starting up a new venture and taking money from one venture that you start as a student to another, that's also one way of trying to grow the money that you have. Obviously taking into cognizance the different risks that are involved in that. So for me personally, that's been the best way that I've been able to try and explore different ways to grow my money.
Thank you. Just another question for Greg again. How can we take advantage? How can one take advantage of the current volatile market? And what are some of the best investment instruments to boost one's portfolio at this current state?
So, I mean, if we're going to speak about volatility and investing in the midst of volatility, then you're really talking about, someone who's trying to time the market. So that's not necessarily investing in the long run. So to give you an example, like Cecil was quite low at some point. People were buying when it was very, very low, and then people started selling when it started increasing by over 100%. So that's more speculative, investing, trying to time the markets and stuff like that. So that's not investing per se. That's trading, if I may put it that way. So there's a difference there.
Just for the viewers at hand, could you just please briefly just elaborate on the difference?
So in investing, it's you're taking a long-term view, on certain assets or certain businesses. So even whatever is happening in the short term, you stay your course, depending on the fluctuations, but you try to stay your course for the long run. Trading really, has a lot to do with also part of it timing the markets, trying to get in at the right price, trying to sell at a better price, and so that's really the core differences.
Another question which was opened up to both Greg and Sthandiwe. What do you think of impact? I'll read out the whole question and then we can just break it out into bits because it's actually quite a lengthy question. What do you think of impact investing, especially through South African entities such as the People's Fund, which gives high returns and low barriers to entry, whilst helping other Black South African entrepreneurs?
I think Greg would want to start with that.
So I don't know much about the People's Fund. What I do understand about it, though, is that it's also somewhat, like a crowdfunding platform as well. And then they would use the money to, help SMEs in investing. They help them with invoice discounting, so purchase orders. They maybe have a tender from government, and they help that person deliver on that mandate. So, but when we talk about impact investing, that's quite a hot topic now. It's really about sustainable investing. How are we able to invest and it has an impact to society as well? So that's quite an interesting and new topic that's still evolving. That's quite interesting as well. I think also on that one, Langa is able to engage more on that.
Yeah. I don't know if I should go. Should I?
Sure.
Yeah,
Please.
I think when it comes to impact investing, although I don't know the huge scope of it, but from the little that I know of it and investing and also as well having a social impact, I think in our country, given the different scope, the scope of the economic climate of our country and how incredibly difficult it can be for people to start businesses and even for young people, I think when it comes to funding can be a huge barrier for people to get into business and especially for SMEs. So I definitely think that it's something that people should explore and look into if they do want to play a role in expanding businesses and helping businesses operate as efficiently as they can in our country. I also think though, when it comes to impact investing, there obviously has to be a level of transparency and accountability within the business sector and within the economic sector for people to know that where their investments and their funds are going, there will really be a return and that social impact will also be felt afterwards. So there also needs to be a certain level of trust, I guess, within that space for impact investing to actually work and materialize in the way it should. But I definitely think that for anyone who wants to have a social impact and invest in those businesses, impact investing is a good option to go with.
That's thank you so much. That's it with regards to our Q&A for today. I don't know, can you guys see me? No. That's it with regards to our Q&A session for today. I will be handing over to Langa Madonka, who is the Deputy President of ABSIP, and I do hope he will actually just touch on a couple of the questions relating, because he is an expert in the field. So over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I apologize for being late. We had slight connectivity issues at the beginning there. But my name is Langa Matonko, and I'm here on behalf of the ABSIP NEC. And I just wanted to start off by saying, on behalf of the NEC, we want to say that congratulations on having this session during the COVID period. And also congratulations on the choice of topic that you have chosen to discuss today. And I think it's critical and important that, especially in the student chapters, the conversations should not only be limited to what is perceived to be the sexy topics, but it should also go into what are presently our realities, some of which are that the workplace and the way in which we invest and save is changing. So on behalf of the President, Polo Liteka, on behalf of the Secretary General, Kelly de Kock, the Deputy Secretary General, Taviso Rachipola, on behalf of the Treasurer General, Kaya Stole, and on behalf of the Deputy Treasurer General, Prudence, I would like to say we are here to support you. We're here to work with you. We're here to see how it is that we can make financial services in South Africa better by bringing about transformation. And I think when we talk about transformation, we're not only talking about the inclusion of Blacks, but we know that the landscape requires also transformation from a gender and diversity perspective. We want a South Africa, and we want a financial services sector in particular that equitably represents the people of South Africa. And I think there were some interesting points that were brought together, that were put forward by our two speakers, Greg and Stha. I have no understanding as to why Greg felt that he should keep throwing me under the bus for questions that were directed at him. I was not invited here to speak on those issues, but I'm happy to make an attempt. And I think if I can just share three things about investments, but let me start first by talking a little bit about impact investing. So I come from a company called Summit Africa. It's a private equity fund, and we are involved in the impact investing space. So basically what impact investing is about delivering superior capital returns on a risk-adjusted basis to your investors, whilst at the same time being in a position to do good for your society, to do good by the environment, and to also show leadership in terms of how those businesses are governed. So South Africa is one of the most unequal societies in the world. Next door, every Santin is an Alex. Next door, every Four Ways is a Deep Slut. And these are some of the issues that impact investing tries to address. Another typical example is that in the South African context, for every 1,000 hospital beds that exist, for every 1,000 people, there's only 2.8 hospital beds. For every and of those 2.8 beds, 53% of them happen to be in the metropolitan areas. And that's the type of situation that impact investing tries to solve for. But also then just to touch on the other items that were mentioned in terms of investing. And I think one of the things that I learned quite early is that investing is first and foremost a long-term game. And one of the things that one should not take for granted is the power of patience, which is normally called the power of compounding. And I think the advantage that you have, as Ty and Greg will have mentioned, is that the ability to start early is also one of the big advantages that you have if you start your investing whilst you are still in varsity. I like to give it.
Sorry, Langa, your mic is just off.
Okay, sorry. I'm saying if I had known then if what I know now, one of the things that I would have done would have been to find an investment tool into which I can deposit. Regardless of what amount it is, I would have continued to consistently invest, understanding that over time, the impact of compounding would play out on its own. I have a friend who, when her son was born, decided to invest, I think 500 rands a month, and the son is 4 years now. And I think when we're having the conversation, we're saying, look, actually, she's only invested about 32,000 rand in cash terms, but because of the performance of the market, barring what happened recently with the downturn in the markets due to the uncertainty linked to COVID, she's actually grown her portfolio to about 91,000 without actually even putting in any bonus payments. And that is one of the benefits. And I think also to speak to the question around what type of property to invest in if you're making 6.5, I think one of the things that is critical about investments is timing. It's also about risk assessment. It's also important for you to also understand and say, looking at where I am, what's the end game? So it might be that the 6.5 might not be the one that is able to buy you the property right now, but it might be the seed towards the property, and choosing the right investment that gives you the right return now, so that you have that seed when the time comes to be able to make the decision to invest in property is also an art in of itself. And I always say to people, try not to time the markets, but try to benefit from the timings in the market. So, for example, as Greg was saying, there are certain products and certain commodities that are going to benefit from this period. It might seem like it's the logical thing for healthcare to be one of those sectors, but with the decisions that were taken by government with regards to healthcare, then it might not necessarily be immediately one of the boom sectors, because elective surgeries, for example, and elective procedures have been put on hold, and that will put a pressure on pricing. But it's definitely going to give a boom to something like DSTV. If you read newspapers, you'll have seen they've picked up 900,000 new subscribers because we're all at home and apparently we're watching more DSTV. If you look at MTN, if you look at Vodacom, if you look at Cell C and all the numbers and the statistics that they're putting out, they've received a significant uptick in terms of the consumption of data. So you really have to take time to understand what you are investing in. And then I think, last but not least, one of the factors that I think is also important for one to consider is, as I said in the beginning, investing is a long-term game, and there's never a period in time where it's not a good time to invest. I think one of the most famous quotes that comes out of the investment space is, invest when there's blood in the streets, even if the blood is your own. because you will never get it wrong, because one day the seed that you sow today will become the oak tree of tomorrow. And as I just conclude and hand back to Sihle, I would like to say, please continue to be committed to ABSIP. Continue to support the initiatives, and we are looking forward to continue to supporting you. There's a lot of great things that I think are coming in the immediate future that we're working at to ensure that you have access to superior networks in terms of reaching people who are in the financial services space, to make sure that the content and the stuff that is delivered for enhancing the student experience as a member of ABSIP is also available. I think there'll be exciting and intriguing events that will provide an immense learning opportunity. And at some point, I'm hoping I can convince Prudence and Greg that we must come down to KZN and come and see you in person. Again, in conclusion, on behalf of the ABSIP NEC, thank you so much for choosing ABSIP, and thank you so much for becoming part of the next chapter that we're writing in the relevance of our organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those words, Lana, and I'll be looking forward to meeting you guys. Just a bit before I hand over to Akona to wrap up our session for this evening, I just want to take this moment just to say a bit about the organization in itself, which is the Finance Gym. I am the CEO of the organization and its founder, and more than anything, we are really just hoping to simplify finance for everyone, for the youth and students. We hope to become your one-stop shop for all your personal finance needs. With that being said, please do follow and like our pages. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We are under the name The Finance Gym. You will find us. Next week on the 16th, we are also launching our website. Please stay tuned on our social media sites. And over to Akona to wrap up our session.
Can you guys see me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to thank our speakers for tonight, Mr. Greg and Sthandiwe, for the insightful knowledge that you guys have provided us with. I do hope that we are going to use the knowledge that we have gained and also apply it and embed it in our lives. I'd also like to thank Mr. Langa Matonga for availing yourself tonight and providing your insights and your knowledge. We're really excited to working with the newly elected National Executive Committee. And we have great confidence that you are going to lift ABSIP to greater heights. Thanks to the Finance Gym for being in partnership with us. And we're looking forward to working with you guys in the future. Thanks to the ABSIP Student Chapter members. Thanks to the young professionals, as well as everyone who took interest in our post for tonight. Thank you so much. Siyabonga kakhulu, and good night.
Cheers.
Cheers.